All right. So can you explain these charges, sex trafficking, fraud, racketeering,
conspiracy?
It's a lot to kind of dissect, and people don't fully understand. Chris was kind of talking about it earlier when he was like, sex trafficking used to be 20 people, but now it's one person. It can be a very murky situation. So can you kind of just explain it from a legal standpoint to kind of give people a better understanding?
Sure. And I think, as you said earlier, to take your words to sort of reset the table, I think context is so important, because if you think about people from the culture that are looking at this and they're thinking, okay, there were chicks that were being flown in, there were parties, there were drugs. This seems like a regular night in hip hop culture. What do you mean conspiracy? What do you mean racketeering? It's not resonating for them because the legal concepts are being applied in a way that they're not normally being applied. And they are sort of taking the same blueprint with what happened with R. Kelly, where when people were initially saying, well, okay, we get that the conduct be repulsive and that it was illegal, they were underage minors. But once you start saying conspiracy and racketeering, it's sort of puzzling. And essentially what they have drafted this indictment to frame it as, there was an enterprise. And they're now expanding what you would think is the enterprise, which is Bad Boy, Combs Enterprises, all of the businesses that we know Diddy has been involved in for decades. And then they sort of slide in there that him having people that work for him, whether they were assistants, bodyguards, whoever, procuring women under the guise of, hey, Diddy's feeling you, he wants to date you, bringing them in, and then bringing in commercial sex workers, that now became a part of his overall business enterprise, his gratification for sexual reasons, which when you think about it, you're saying, no, that doesn't make sense, because your intuition is, well, how does what he wants to do in the privacy of his bedroom and utilizing perhaps his cachet as a music mogul, and individuals saying, party at Diddy's house, of course I'm there, where you or I would be attracted to a woman, say, hey, you want to come see me? They would fly in, and you would think nothing of it. But they have the tool that allows them to expand the enterprise to include things that would normally be personal acts. So that's the first step, is that they have to argue that there is this enterprise. And then they have to get into, well, what's the purpose of this enterprise? So they first start talking about Bad Boy Entertainment, Ciroc at the time when he was doing liquor, and then also include in there, well, procuring sex workers for his sexual gratification. They now make that an additional purpose of the enterprise. Mm-hmm. And then they build on that and say, well, here are the acts, and these are the things that were engaged in by him and others on his behalf in furtherance of that. And then they take things, there were drugs present. People are claiming that he was giving them drugs. So now you have the fact that he had illegal drugs, and then they added an intent to distribute. They take something and just using the video that we saw of Cassie and him not allowing her to leave. Oh, now they got you on kidnapping. So now what many people would look at as a toxic domestic violence encounter under the law, that's kidnapping and can be framed as kidnapping. So you have all of these things that are predicates that they can prove are elements of this broader conspiracy. And then again, I know that there are plenty of people in the culture, guys and girls, that have had adult entertainers, strippers, dancers, and flown them in. And there was an understanding, either explicitly or indirectly understood, that there was going to be money in exchange for your company, for your sex. You could be charged with violating the Mann Act. They're not going to target an everyday person. They're going to target someone like Diddy because it's salacious and it makes good news. But that's now a violation of the Mann Act. And interestingly enough,
what's the Mann Act? What is that?
The Mann Act is essentially, you violate the Mann Act if you are trafficking an individual across state lines for the purpose of illegal sex acts, or it even has language from its original drafting, immoral conduct. Now, interestingly enough, the Mann Act was originally used to target people of color, and they would use that to target us. So for it to now still be in place and being used to target one of the most powerful and one of the most successful black men is poetic, even though it's tragic. But then you have the violation of the Mann Act, and then they get into people being threatened, talking about possession of illegal firearms, which were recovered in the Miami house. So now you just build upon it. And I think the kicker that is the most devastating is because they're trying to draw this nexus and correlation between Puff Daddy, the businessman, and Puff Daddy having freak-offs. There are pieces of the statute that allow for you to do forfeiture. Meaning if they can make the argument that this is in some way interrelated to his business, the billion-dollar empire that he spent 30 years building, they could try to start stripping assets from him, trying to say that this was the result of this criminal enterprise, which is sort of ironic because in one breath, they're charging him with trying to tamper with witnesses and saying that you were doing all of these criminal things to keep the freak-offs quiet, but then in the same breath saying that you did it to further promote your legitimate businesses, and it can't be both.